The superhero paradox. What is it? Why is it important? And how am I going to avoid it? I'm Jamie Davenport, and this is Crafting the Cowl. Okay, I wasn't going to bring up the superhero paradox this early on in the series, but I've already gotten a few comments and emails about people saying they wanted to be my supervillains, and I'm not super down with that. I know most of them are like just joking around, but this is not a laughing matter. This is an actual problem with having superheroes in the real world. Escalation, or the superhero paradox, is a real threat to me becoming a real superhero. Yes, I know that my mission or my crusade is a fairly selfish one right now, but I'm hoping that in becoming a superhero, I can actually affect major change and positivity in the world. So please don't watch these videos and think that it's a good opportunity for you to become a supervillain or whatever. It's not cool to be evil. It's not funny to be a supervillain. Okay, off my soapbox and into the superhero paradox. What is the superhero paradox exactly? Quoting tvtropes.org, superheroes try to make the world safer for innocents, but in the long term, they seem to make the world more dangerous. Example number 1. Our pal Spider-Man. I think the most famous instance of a villain being created because of Spider-Man is Venom. Spider-Man gets the symbiote costume, and during that time, he starts antagonizing Eddie Brock, who is another photojournalist. This ends up pushing Eddie Brock into a really dark place. Eventually, Spider-Man decides that the symbiote costume is actually making him a worse person, and he decides to get rid of it. When he does get rid of the costume, Eddie Brock happens to be in the vicinity. Eddie Brock's hatred towards Peter Parker and the symbiote's hatred towards Peter Parker binds them together and creates Venom. The point is, if Spider-Man had not been a superhero, Eddie Brock would have never become Venom. So here's another example. In the 2008 film Iron Man, the world is seemingly exactly how it is today. Tony Stark was a weapons manufacturer. He ended up building a suit that allowed him superhuman powers. Now this is great because he uses it to take down bad guys. He takes down evil people, people who are selling the weapons to other people. Even though he created the weapons, it's fine. By creating Iron Man and alienating his business partner Obadiah Stane, Tony Stark actually also created his arch nemesis Ironmonger. If Tony Stark never created the Iron Man suit, then Obadiah would have never stolen his schematics and created the Ironmonger suit as well. They would have never had their knockout, drag-out fight in Los Angeles, endangering lives and destroying property. As you can see, having an actual superhuman or superhero in the world could be a bad thing. Before hitting the streets myself, I need to figure out a way to avoid escalation. If I go out there and I start fighting crime using gadgets and weapons, I need to make sure that the criminals that I'm fighting against don't start using bigger, stronger weapons. How to avoid the superhero paradox. My first idea is just to stay anonymous. By avoiding the limelight, I hopefully can also avoid the general public copying me and law enforcement coming after me. Hopefully this will also keep my existence away from criminals, and then I'll strike. I think one of the best ways for me to do this is to do my investigating outside of my costume. If I'm walking around with a helmet and pads and this whole like big costume on, it'll obviously draw a lot of attention to me on the street. So I'll probably come up with a inconspicuous costume as well. We'll call that my investigating costume. This should help me out in day-to-day situations while keeping my identity secret, but also not making me look like a crazy person. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'll figure it out soon. That'll be another episode. The second thing I'm going to do is when I'm in costume, I'm only going to go out at night. Kind of like Batman. If I'm out in the middle of the day in a black costume, again, it'll just cause a lot of attention and people will wonder what the fuck I'm doing. It's one of the things I love about Batman. In a lot of his stories, he's regarded as a legend or a myth. I think that's a really cool idea. Not only does it keep him out of the media, but it also kind of frightens the criminals. They don't think he exists, but they kind of suspect he might. That way when he shows up, it's terrifying because all they've heard are rumors and myths about what he can do and what he's made of and all this kind of weird, creepy stuff. So staying out of the limelight and staying anonymous is probably one of my biggest abilities to fight crime. And then it's also a really good way for me to avoid escalation, because if I don't exist, theoretically, then criminals have no reason to escalate. The third thing I'm going to do is avoid actual conflict. If I don't need to get into a fight, why do it? This does a number of things. Number one, it keeps me safe. But also, honestly, most criminals aren't necessarily bad people. They just have hard lives, or they go down paths that they probably wouldn't normally have gone down, except for their life kind of just got tough or something happened. I don't really think that a lot of criminals are necessarily bad people. I think they've just had difficult lives and they've taken the wrong path a couple of times, and that's why they're where they are. So I don't want to hurt people who are just really already in pain. I'm not entirely sure how to implement this yet, but I think it's a good way to keep escalation from happening. The last thing I'm going to try out is therapy. Now, I'm not a psychologist or a therapist, but I'm pretty good at listening to people, so I'm going to disarm criminals with my words. Instead of just beating a criminal to a pulp and then leaving them for the cops to pick up, I might just try to apprehend them and talk to them and see what's going on. It might actually work better than just beating the living crap out of them. It wouldn't make for very good TV, but I'm not here to make really good TV. Of course, if talking doesn't work out, I'll have to dish up a serving of a knuckle sandwich. Thanks for watching. My name's Jamie Davenport. This is Crafting the Cowl. If you enjoyed the video, smash that like button like the Hulk. If you want to become a superhero like me, subscribe to the channel.